Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Alex Lopez Talks on the Alex Lopez Rocks YouTube channel. I'm obviously Alex Lopez, but joining me today is the amazing and talented Keith Gleason. For those of you who don't know, Keith is a comic book creator and writer. He's also one of the organizers and founders of PlasticCon, one of the up-and-coming developing Comic Cons in New England. Keith, thank you for joining me, man. This is a long time overdue.
Yeah, man. It's great to see you, Alex. Yeah. It's funny, we bumped into each other like a month ago.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen you. For people that don't know, I know Alex going way back to early 2000s, something like that.
Late 90s, because
late 90s.
You were working at the comic book shop that I used to go to, and I was always acting to be like, hey, when's the new Nightwing coming out?
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
So I think
but you had good taste in comics, so we used to talk a lot.
Oh, I loved it,
that.
Man. Yeah. So yeah, I think I've known you since like 98 or 99.
Yes, it's been a while. It was nice to see you again, though, because I mean, I know I ran into you at the Plastic City Comic Con a couple times, and then I haven't seen you besides that. I think I saw you once at that scene once.
But, yeah, I think I saw you like once or twice at like Newberry Comics or once or twice at that scene.
Yeah, so we always kind of bump into each other, but it's
usually something comic related. Yeah, where I'm looking at a comic book or a magazine, and you are too. Because I think I ran into you at one of the Boston Comic Cons too.
Yeah. I've been tabling at a ton of shows too, so I'm sure I'm going to see you more,
Oh, absolutely, man. You know I'm going to be there.
Yeah, definitely. It's awesome. I'm glad you're still kind of, following comics and
still a fan.
Man. You can't get away, It's like every time you may read less, but it always brings you back,
I hear you, man. I love it. Now, like I said, you used to work at a comic book store, and then at a certain point you became the comic book creator, so you kind of flip the narrative for yourself. How did that happen? What got you into writing comics?
Well, honestly, you probably didn't know this about me, but I was always heading on that path.
Oh wow.
Yeah, even when I was when I was younger, I can actually draw a little bit, but it's more of a cartooning kind of style, like stuff you would see in the newspapers, like Garfield, that kind of style I can do. When I was really young, I wanted to be a cartoonist. I wanted to draw comic strips, and growing up, I kind of I went out and I would go back and forth in and out of it. But when I was working at That's E, I was actually doing on the side. I was actually making comic strips and trying to submit them to what the ones that you see in the newspapers. They're all run by what they call syndicates, and I was always trying to pitch to those guys and get my comic strip to them. And then somewhere along the line, after I left That's E, I started getting more into comic books, more writing and creating my own thing. But my art is not good for drawing dynamic superheroes because it's very cartoony. So I always would hire an artist to bring a book to life, basically, and but I still did my own stuff. I should have sent you some of my own comics. I took all the comic strips I created and I compiled them into a comic book and started selling them that way, a little bit more like kid stuff, I guess,
That's really cool though. You see, I've known you for over 25 years, and it's wow, or almost 25 years. And and I never knew that about you. So that's really cool.
Yeah. It's I think when I was at That's E, I was at a point in my life where I had just finished college, and I think That's Entertainment was my first or second job coming back from college. So I was in kind of that area of my life where I was just working, and I wasn't really pursuing anything. Like I said, I was trying to do the submission stuff, but it would be long periods of time before I did that. And I think once I left That's E and started working more in a corporate kind of environment is when I was just now's the time. I got the money. And, you know, I got the drive to make my own stuff. And about, I want to say I started setting up at conventions and selling my own comic, probably around 2008. Like I started going to a bunch of conventions. I would go to like a handful a year. And now it seems like I'm going to like a handful a month now, you know? So it's like, yeah, it's amped up big time.
I love it. That's so cool.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm trying to, you know, I'm not quite at the point where I can quit my job yet and like start, you know, trying to just live off of this. But I'm getting to the point where I might be able to do like a part-time job and then do this stuff at the side. So it's not,
that's nice.
Yeah, it's not bad, you know? So it's like, I'm getting there. It's like, but you know, being a comic fan, it's not like, you know, like with the movies, like where it's like movies are making millions of dollars. The comics are lucky they're making thousands of dollars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the readership is always going down. You know, I mean, print media is dying. So it's a tough industry to kind of, you know, stand out. And like, so it's like, you know, it's more like the independent road. I imagine it's the same with you being into a band and stuff. It's like you're trying to chart your own course, right? It's like, because like, I mean, because if you think about it, it's like, you know, and it's the same with you guys. It's like, what's Marvel and DC really going to do for me? Not much, you know, but like, and same with you, like what's a record contract going to really do? It's like people steal music. You know, it's like you make your money by building a brand and like, you know, touring yourself and doing everything for yourself. You know what I mean? So it's like, I imagine it's very similar, right?
For you? Absolutely. And that's just it. Like everyone's dream at one point in their life, like if you're, I imagine for a writer, just like a musician, is to be signed to that big label and you're selling out arenas and stadiums.
Yeah.
And I imagine writers were like, I want to write or draw, or you know, comic book writers and artists have always been like, I want to work for Marvel or DC.
I want to write Batman.
And I want to write Batman. I want to write that iconic character. And so it's kind of, you're absolutely right with that, with the parallels, because it's like you don't need them to a degree, but when you're an unknown writer or an unknown artist, that is instant exposure, and millions of people will see it. But eventually you tire out of telling somebody else's story and you kind of want to tell out your own, which is
exactly, and
which is, by the way, kind of what created the comic boom of the 90s too, with Rob Liefeld
exactly,
and Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many, like, I mean, if you go on YouTube and you just look up some of like the old school creators, I mean, there's so many of them on there, just doing their own YouTube shows and like promoting their own books. And they often talk about how it's like, this is the way, you know, it's just like, don't work for a corporation where you don't own anything, you know? And, you know, I don't know. It's like one of those, it's a mixed bag. Yeah. It's a mixed bag, because then my question to them is like, well, you wouldn't have all these thousands of subscribers if you didn't work for those guys to begin with. You know what I mean? So it's like, I get where you're coming from, but you know, you got to realize that, you know, you have a name and we don't, you know what I mean? So it's
absolutely.
Like, it's like,
and you kind of nailed it with the dying media, but before the print started dying out, comic books were a hot commodity, especially in the early to mid 90s, where where the popularity of Wildstorm and Image Comics, all of that under that wing were there. Like you had the X-Men come out with Jim Lee and Chris Claremont, X-Men #1. I think it still holds the record for the most sold comics ever in one print. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. So you had Chris Claremont taking a private jet and buying lunch and dinner for his friends that worked at DC, and I guess there was a story where the head editor at the time, editor-in-chief at the time, said, if I ever find out that you guys went to dinner with Chris or got on his plane again, you're fired. They were jealous back then. Like, it was what Image was doing, you know? Yeah, it's interesting, you know? And it's like, you're right about the value. And now it's like, I see only comics that go up in value if it's like first appearance of something that's announced as a Marvel movie. You know what I mean? Like that seems to be the trend right now. Yeah.
And both those companies seem to be cutting back way back with books and output. So it's
I think
kind of a
going more
sketchy
digital,
situation now. What's that?
I think they're going more digital now too, where they
I
have
think
their
so too.
they have
And,
their own app, and it's like you can read the comics there. You're gonna wait a month later or 6 months later, but you'll get it, you know. Kind of
yeah, definitely. I think COVID killed a lot of it too, because you got a lot of people that go weekly to get their books, and as soon as you knock them out of that pattern, it's like, are they
It's
ever
hard to get
coming
back into it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
by the way,
they realize they don't need it, you know.
That's literally what happened to me.
Is it really?
Yeah, I was getting like stacks upon stacks upon stacks a week. I mean, besides the rising prices, I was dropping a good, like, I was getting at least 10 to 12 comics a week.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a good $30-$40 easily, right?
Exactly. Like 30 to 50 depending on the tag of the comic. So that's a nice chunk of change when you realize week after week after week for
it's just going.
Just because it was part of the process and the habit. It's like Wednesdays I'd get my comics.
Right.
I'd read them. Get through the week, repeat the process. But then, like, I think it was back in 2018, something threw me off off the course for like 2 or 3 weeks. And then I went back one more time, and I was like, and then I just didn't go back. It just kind of felt awkward. And it's so I'm hoping, I apologize to everyone at That's Entertainment and John Finch in Pittsburgh for that stack that I left, and when I just vanished off the face of the earth, because that was not.
Well, that's all right. I think after like a month or something, they just close it and put it back out, you know. So they're probably fine, you know. But I get that. But you know, it also like is a testament to the quality, because back in the day, those were can't miss books, you know, and like you were rushing to go to the shop to grab them, and nowadays it's like you don't even notice you missed it. You know what I mean? It's like it's the difference in quality is big time, I think, you know. There's still a lot of great books. I mean, I still collect some.
There's a lot, and there's still great quality writers out there.
Yeah, definitely. But it's like the need to have them, I think, is dropped way down in this day and age, you know. So, but to mention like the Comic-Con too, like that I started, I started that because like I think I'm trying to think. It was first year was 2016, I think. The interesting thing that was happening at Comic-Cons at that time, like it started like 2 years before that, we started seeing a shift in all the Comic-Cons going from being on a focus of comic books to being more on the focus of like whatever the hot TV show was at the moment. So it's like all of a sudden they, you know, these shows went from having like guys like Chris Claremont and Jim Lee to having, you know, random zombie guy from Walking Dead as the main, you know what I mean? Like it was just,
or like David Duchovny from the X-Files.
It was that kind of stuff I started seeing. And it got to the point where me and my wife, she does the shows with me. We started tabling even at Boston, and like we were doing really well, like making money at those shows. And then all of a sudden when that happened, you know, we were barely covering our table costs and all the parking costs and everything like that. And I'm like, what is going on? It's like, and all the vendors were, you know, complaining, all the artists. It's like, you know, it's like you go to Boston, it costs like $50 to get in the door. And then you buy an autograph from one of these guys, and it's like $100. And it's like, then they walk around the show, they have no money for anything else. So it was like, you got to the point where it's like, what can we do? You know, like there's got to be something I can do here. So I started thinking about doing my own show and kind of returning it back to like that 90s style stuff, you know, like, remember the days we'd go to a Comic-Con, it was like, you know, a guy at the door with like a cigar box, and like, you know, the admission was like $5, and then you know, you give them $5 and you walk around. It was just nothing but artists, writers, and like comic dealers. Like, so that's sort of what I envisioned for Plastic City when I started it. Is I wanted that. I wanted to, you know, like if you want celebrities, there's a million other shows for you. But if you want comics, come to my show, you know. So that was the whole reason I started it. And you know, honestly, it's like I don't mind being the promoter. It's a lot of managing things, you know, and
a lot of moving parts, I imagine.
a lot of moving parts, but
Yeah.
it's moving parts that, you know, because I've been in customer service forever is like a real job.
Yeah.
It's more logistical things, like, you know, it's like, oh, this guy's coming here, you know, I got to make this map for the floor and I'm going to put all these guys, you know, I take a lot of time and effort with that stuff, but I don't find it hard or challenging. It's just more of like, I just want to make sure I have enough money to make everything happen, you know? And so it's like, that's where the challenge lies a little bit. But yeah, that was the whole point of it, is that, you know, I wanted to change back to what we love, you know what I mean? So like, that's why I started it. And I think everybody does the show.
Are cool too. We're not, I know you're not taking a shot at like those bigger cons that have like the celebrities and stuff like that, because it plays a role and it's getting people in the door.
Yeah, those shows are fine. It's just that I want this kind of show to exist too over here. You know what I mean?
Because sometimes the main component of the Comic-Con is the comics, and that tends to disappear with the bigger shows because it becomes more of a celebrity event versus focusing on the comics. Yeah, totally.
But it's also focusing on, like, because there is a lot of fans. I get it too. There's a lot of fans that don't read comics that love the movies.
Yep.
They love, you know, memorabilia, but they don't necessarily read comics. And I get it. You know, those are what those shows are good for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I like a show like Boston Comic-Con up until about I think 2016, 2017, when it switched over to Fan Expo.
Yeah.
Or it switched over to Fan Expo. It was a good balance of everything. It was like they had a lot of great comic guests, and then they had like 5 or 6 celebrities, you know, and then the rest was just vendors and like selling toys, comics, cards, and it was just a good ecosystem. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it wasn't too much in one.
You had the cosplayers, everyone. Everyone played their role perfectly.
Exactly, and that's what Terrificons kind of become. I don't know if you've ever been to that show, Mohegan Sun.
I haven't been to that one.
That one's a nice one. It's you know, it's reasonably priced, and it's become that. It's like 6 or 7 celebrities, a bunch of comic guys, and then comic dealers and comic vendors and things like that. So I really like doing that show.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. The con scene has changed a lot over the years.
It's evolved, and it's not necessarily a good or a bad evolution. It's just evolution. And
I think so.
And sometimes you want to hold on to the stuff that you enjoy from a Comic-Con. So I admire that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and you gotta kind of be, you know, have shows for new fans too that aren't into that. They might, but they support the Marvel movies and the DC movies and things like that. And
sometimes you have like the parents that are coming in there to do the Comic-Con because they know that they sell action figures there. And,
yep.
You know,
often see tons of families coming to shows and stuff like that, you know? And that's why the other reason I wanted to make it affordable too. Like I think at some point we're going to have to jump it to $10 for admission, but in this day and age, I think that's really still reasonable.
Reasonable. I think,
you know, because like a lot of shows are 25 now. And,
I think the last one I went to was Rhode Island Comic-Con of 2018 or 2019. No, that was 2018.
Okay.
And I was so over it.
Well, that's another, that show. Yeah, I refuse to do that show because all it is celebrities. And
well, for me, it wasn't even the celebrities, it's the congestion. Like
yes.
Like, because you also have, I think when you're planning a venue and an event, you have to be cognizant of what the floor layout is. So if you're basically have a narrow hallway with 20,000 people trying to get through, you kind of bottlenecked it.
Yeah, they always have trouble with that. I remember one year I stopped tabling with them about 2014, and they had fire codes, they had all kinds of crap going on. And I remember my wife, it was a friend of ours' wife, went outside to grab lunch. They wouldn't let her back in, and it's like, she's like, I'm like one of the vendors, you know, and they wouldn't let her in because they were filled to capacity, and they were getting shut down by the fire chief, and it was just a mess.
I remember that from 2014. I was at the Rhode Island Comic-Con.
Oh, were you? Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that was
because it's like they basically said, if the minute you guys leave this part of the building, you guys can't come back in. We're beyond capacity. I'm like, don't worry, we're planning on it.
Yeah. That show. So I did it the last time I did it. I did 2014. Then I stopped, and then the year before COVID hit, I was like, let me try it again. You know, because I had Mighty Mascots, and I was like, let me try it, see if I, can do a little better. And it was even worse. It was just the comic area is shrunk to about 2 rows, and everything else is just celebrities and vendors. It's just not a good environment for a creator. They can't really stand out there, and the prices just push you out of being there.
I hear you. And like so I thought it was 2018, it was 2017, because 2014 I went and we met my friend and I, who were Power Rangers fans as well.
Oh, okay.
Met the Red Ranger. And then in 2017 I met the Green Ranger, which is the one I wanted to meet in the first place. So it worked out. But then after that, I'm like, all right, I did what I wanted to at the Comic-Con I met.
Let's get out of here.
I'm good. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna stop off on the way and grab a burrito at Qdoba or something,
Yeah, they go. Well, they make it unpleasant that you don't even want to walk around, it's like, because there is so many people,
Yeah,
I get that, so I hear you. I mean, and that's part of the fun of doing a show like that, is walking around and see what people are selling.
Oh, absolutely.
But if the place is filled to the brim like a sardine can, forget it,
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. Now, you were mentioning your Mighty Mascots. I want to make sure that people understand how awesome this comic book is. I ordered a couple of comics, and Keith was kind enough to throw in a few more for me to read. I love it.
Well, I felt bad because you ordered the 100-pager, and it basically just reprints the first 3.
Oh, I did not know that.
It was like, he probably thought that was a new story. So I threw in the actual 4, 5, and 6 so that you could have a new story,
I appreciate it. So for our audience, Mighty Mascots is awesome, by the way. I love it. It's got like a little bit of retro, it's got some humor, it's a tastefully done satire with its own unique storytelling.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
My whole drive behind creating that was I wanted to do something that was, when the reader reads it, feels like they got up on a Saturday morning at like 8 a.m. and grabbed a bowl of cereal. What it felt like.
Oh, did it really? Okay. It felt like it felt like I was reading a Saturday morning cartoon.
That's what I was going for.
Awesome.
Everybody who's read it has told me it should be an animated show, and
I agree completely.
Oh, thanks. I'm constantly pushing it, but I don't know. Hopefully someday it gets into the right hands, and they're like, they want to make it. But I think it would be a great show.
Yeah.
And it just pays homage to that kind of time. Those cartoons that had like goofy like plots, and like, I would say comparable to something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something like that.
Yeah,
where it's just like total absurd concept, but
like even like the Ghostbusters cartoons and stuff like that.
Yes,
like it literally has that Saturday morning vibe where it's like,
oh, thanks.
Yeah, you nailed it, and it's like, and I'm if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. But I love the play on the characters. Like,
oh, thanks.
And that's where I saw the satire. I'm like, this is brilliant. So you're taking like these breakfast cereal like characters,
mascots, and
you're putting them into a Saturday morning cartoon adventure. It's genius.
Basically, it made them a superhero team.
Exactly. Like, who does that? I'm like, you don't see that out there anymore. It's great.
Well, it came to me the weirdest place. My wife, the inspiration for it came from she bought me this T-shirt, and it had a lot of the regular cereal mascots on it, like Tony the Tiger and like the Sun from Raisin Bran and all. They were all hanging out on the shirt, and just said Breakfast Club on it. And I was like, it was a funny shirt. And I was brushing my teeth and looking at it in the mirror one day, and I was like, that's when it hit. I was like, wow, that could be something, and I think when I first envisioned it, I thought it was going to be like just a comedy, like a reality kind of show where they're all living in a house together. But I think it really came together when I thought of it as a superhero book, and then it kind of spun out of there. And I created all the backstory and all the, all the character Bible kind of stuff that you do. And, I pitched it to Alterna Comics, who is like they're kind of like a small indie label. Yeah. And they're in a lot of stores. Like I've seen pictures of people posting them in like, Midtown, Midtown nice. Comics. And, I've seen pictures of them in Florida, sometimes over in the UK, which is crazy. Awesome. So they do have like a presence. So, they're I guess, they're pretty well known indie label. So once I pitched it to them, they liked it. I had to go back and retool a few things and pitch it again. Yeah. But after that, I got the contract and I've been working with them ever since. And he's basically said I could keep producing issues as long as we awesome. As long as they sell at a certain level. So yeah. I'm just going to keep going until they tell me no, So,
do it, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm trying to produce like 3 a year, I think it's a reasonable amount, and it's, with working a full-time job and everything, so.
And by the way, I love the bookmark. I'm not sure if the camera's picking up on this or panning. There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
From Mighty Mascots. I love the play on words. Keith also tossed in some really cool trading cards, but what you don't see is you have the nutritional facts from the cereal behind it, which is instead of doing the stats like you would for like on a cereal and stuff like that, which by the way does have like the power level stats, but it's hidden in the nutritional facts. I saw that, I'm like, oh my god, that's brilliant.
Thanks, man.
But my favorite out of all three has to be the throwback to the old to the old like Sweet Pies. I'm not going to name the brand, even though they're local. I'm not going to name the brand, but the Sweet Pies parodies adverts that you would have with the superheroes inside those comic books.
Yeah, those are the best from growing up in the 80s.
From like the late 70s and throughout the 80s, where you have like these heroes hanging out together that usually would never hang out in comic books. Yeah, and they fight some random villain, and it's because of fruit pies.
Yeah.
I saw
that. It was the Hulk one, when the Hulk basically murdered teenagers so he could have fruit pies.
Oh my god, yes.
Like I think in the strip, it's funny if you look it up. I think he rolls up the kids and like he picks up the street, and rolls them into like a. Like a roll, like a carpet or something. And I was like, man, he murdered those kids.
Those kids aren't alive anymore.
Yeah. Just some funny stuff. But yeah, it was priceless. I embraced that whole crazy marketing stuff, But what were we gonna say?
No, I'm just saying, like, I loved it. It was like that was probably I loved the issues, and I'm enjoying them. But I love also the side stuff too. Like that thing there, just like I saw that, it brought me back to being a little kid, reading like the old Spider-Man comics, and then seeing like Spider-Man get into a fight with Dr. Doom over fruit pies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it was always absurd.
We're like, why would Dr. Doom get so worked up about like fruit pies? Kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. It's good stuff, man. It was like that fun, goofy stuff when you're growing up that you don't even like think about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the other reason I love that publisher is they publish with newsprint, which no comic, I don't think anybody publishes with newsprint
not anymore. No. Yeah.
But like because of that, the price
it has that retro vintage feel to it.
Retro feel, and I can sell the book for $2 cover price, and people the difference I've been seeing since I've had those comics versus the ones I self-publish is they're so easy to sell because they are so cheap. And I usually do, hey, if people want to buy 1, 2, and 3, I'll sign them. And they get all 3 issues for $5, which is the cost of like one book now,
Exactly. And not only is it heck of a deal, it's an awesome story arc. It's like they're so enjoyable. Man. They're so
thanks.
Really
I appreciate
good.
That. Appreciate that. I did you get where the well, actually the first story arc has a couple villains, but did you get where the toothpaste guys are from?
I'm still trying to figure that
very
one out.
70s. It's very 70s. It's do you remember the cavity creeps and those old Crest commercials?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're from. Remember the Crest
awesome.
team?
Yeah, because I was like the Crest. All right, that makes perfect sense. It's like you have like the guys with toothbrushes and they're semi-dentist looking guys, and they're about to, and they're like, nope, you all been all of a sudden they ended up turning it around. Nope, you guys have also been contaminated. So you guys are part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, kind of like I wanted to have that little twist where it's like they think they're going to be the saviors, and they actually end up making a problem even worse. You know, I wanted like the first story arc to introduce people to the mascots, but also throw them into this situation that was like, you know, like crazy, basically trying to get out of it. When you read the second story arc, it's a little more laid back and a little more mission based, but the first one I wanted it to be like kind of like thrown you in there, and it's like craziness, you know. So
my favorite probably is the alien,
Mondo. He's my favorite to write, actually,
because he's got this dry alien wit, like almost like a Frasier thing, but he's also like an arrogant jerk about it in the process.
Yes.
So it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, he's so bored by everything, and I love writing him because of that reason, you know. And he's also naive too, which I like. It's like he's very. Sometimes he doesn't, you know, and that's often people I've known that have been really smart. They don't have any common sense.
Yep.
So that's why I kind of wrote him like that a little bit, you know. So
it was so well done, and
thanks, man.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait to get to the next issues and see what else you got coming up. And speaking of that,
I'm working on. I started writing issue 7.
Nice.
The 3 that you have there, 4, 5, and 6, are really actually very new.
Awesome.
I don't even think Altern is selling them on their website yet, because I basically did a crowdfunding campaign to pay for those. So I've been kind of sending those out to people that back the campaign first, awesome. And then Altern is going to sell them later on their website. So I don't think I'll be doing 7, 8, 9 until like next year sometime, but it's coming, you know. So I'm working on those now to get a head start on it, you know.
I love it, man. I can't wait to read more of it. Do you have any other comic projects you're working on?
I have a lot in my head that I'd like to do, but finding the time to do them on top of everything else is the problem, I guess.
I'm gonna have to pick your brain off screen because I got an idea that I want to bounce off you, but I'll do that off screen.
Yeah. I do have stuff that I want to do that's kicking around in my brain. I have one idea that I really want to do, so eventually I'm gonna just write it, because it's like one of those, you know, it's like anything, like once you have something nagging in your brain, you got to get it out, you know.
Oh yeah.
But I try to keep mascots my first stuff, because it's the stuff people really like, that, you know, I have fans that come and buy the new issues every time I'm at a show, and I have people all, you know, that picked it up in stores across the country that follow me on Twitter and things like that. So it's hard to like just drop that and go to something else, you know. And plus I love that. I love the property. I love coming up with new crazy villains and, like, you know, storylines. And it's almost like when I pitch it to somebody, I tell them it's, you know, it's like old school Avengers, like 80s Avengers.
Yeah, like West Coast, like West Coast Avengers.
Meets like a Saturday morning cartoon, basically. You know?
Oh, absolutely. Like,
so that's the tone I'm going for. Like, that's sort of like the, you know, the stories. I don't want them to be too kiddie, but I don't want them to be too adult either. You know, so I kind of like the middle ground. I kind of look at as like Batman animated series, like that kind of. Yeah. You know, where it's like safe for a kid, but it's a little edgy, you know, for you know, for like a little kid. You know what I mean? So.
Oh, absolutely. But it's like it's so well done. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading issues 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that a lot.
So before we wrap up, Keith, is there anything you want to plug and promote, and where can everybody find you? And by the way, folks, for everything he's saying, we're going to have links in this video description below.
Okay.
So if they miss it, you don't have to worry.
Okay, great. My website is probably the best place to see everything that I do. And that's recklesssidekick.com. The place where I'm most active is probably Twitter. I'm on Facebook and all that stuff. And you could get all those links at recklesssidekick.com.
And we're going to have all those links on the video description below as well.
Oh, perfect. On Twitter, I think it's at Reckless Gleason, all one word. But that's where I'm most active, I think. Like, I have everything, but I'm most active there. But if you hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, I see it, but I might not react to it for a day or so, you know?
Okay.
So, but I check Twitter every day and every few hours probably. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. And then Plastic City Comic Con whenever we have a new show.
And we'll be having Keith on here probably in the near future once the Comic Con comes back.
Yeah, definitely.
We're gonna have you back on.
I set a date.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely would do that. I set a date for I think July 16th, 2022. So I have a date, nice. But haven't done much beyond that yet. So maybe come back in, I don't know, May or something, or June or something. And
yeah, we'll have another episode.
A little more put together, you know.
Yeah, we'll have another episode in maybe June, right? Like a few weeks before the con starts up.
Okay, yeah.
It'll be great.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. We can talk about all of that.
That'll be great.
All right.
Awesome. Good, well, man. Keith, thank you so much for making the time for us. This has been another episode of Alex Lopez Talks. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Be light and love.